Hey guys, welcome to the new committed session. Don't forget to register in Slido. From the right corner, you can see the QR code. Please scan it so you will be able to ask questions. Today, usually we have three persons in studio. My name is Viktor Sokolovsky. My colleague Mikhail.
My name is Mikhail Chub. I'm a 18 years old QA, and I will be co-interviewing Igor.
And from other side of our virtual conference room, we have a very interesting person. We have engineering manager from Tinder, expert in mobile testing and all-around testing, Igor Darovsky. Hi, Igor.
Hey guys, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Thank
That's
you for
awesome.
coming. So let's start from the simple question. What you are currently doing in Tinder?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking, Victor. My role has changed since I joined Tinder in 2016, and actually 3 times in a row. I was joined the Tinder as the manager for testing just the automation team, and as time progressed, responsibilities grew up and added up. And right now, I'm managing what I call release management team. A lot of folks would be like, "What is a release management?" I never heard of it before. So basically, my job as engineering manager make sure that both iOS and Android apps are shipped on time and with a great quality. And that's pretty much what I do in a nutshell at the Tinder at the moment.
Okay. Uh, I investigated a little bit your LinkedIn, and I know that you have a very, very interesting story in terms of testing. A long time ago, you started as a manual tester. Later, you moved to the test automation, and you mostly focused on mobile products. And I know you tested the Barnes and Noble reader, yes. And
Yep, long time.
later you moved to the management, and now you are engineering management. Could you could you give us a little bit more details about your journey, how you started, why you decided to switch, how you learned, and how you actually from the manual tester become an engineering manager in the world-known and great big company?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. I think when I was a kid, I was motivated because I immigrated to the United States when I was 17 years old, and my entire surrounding were guys in high tech. My parents moved to San Francisco. Obviously, Silicon Valley had a huge influence on me. One of my friends, actually, well-known Jan Koum, who's the founder of WhatsApp, and I know him way before he became that famous person. He was just employee at Yahoo, and I think I was motivated by folks like him, and that's why I joined the IT industry. And like you said earlier, my first job started as a manual tester back in 2007. I worked with a small startup on the phones. If you remember J2EME phones, like Sony Ericsson, Nokia, Symbian, way before iPhone and Android platforms were introduced. And luckily, in 2009, 2010, I switched to mobile, focus on mobile platforms such as Android first, and then later years also learned about the iOS, both testing and development. In terms of the journey from manual tester to the automation, to the development, to the engineering manager, it took me about the entire decade. And it was interesting because I think luckily for me, once you become a successful person, it becomes contagious. And people learn about you, especially when I start presenting at various conferences around Silicon Valley and small, webinars and local meetups. People start recognizing me, and that's why I encourage everybody to not just being a professional person in your career, but also be a presenter and a mentor a certain way, and that's how you're going to progress in your career. I think it helped me a lot. Like I think Barnes and Noble e-reader, right? You said that was a great opportunity to work on a product that actually not only see the daylight, but work product that you can go to China at the factory and see that being manufactured and hold in your hand. I think that for me was a great opportunity to work end to end from the concept, from the design of hardware and software. It was very similar to what a Kindle is doing, right? So it used to call Nook. And I had a great opportunity to work on, like I mentioned earlier, on end-to-end, from the beginning until the final release, build the entire QA team. And obviously, that use case helped me to get a job at Expedia. Expedia is probably one of the largest travel agents in the United States. And when back in 2012, they were building the mobile department, they invited me because they didn't have expertise in mobile. And at that time, I knew how to build not only the processes around, how to set up manual testing, but I also knew how to do it in automation way. So I had to build the entire team around the mobile testing experience. Again, because of my previous success at Barnes & Noble. And just like a similar way later in 2016, Tinder invited me because of my success at Expedia and offered me to move from the Silicon Valley with my family into the Los Angeles. That's where their headquarters of the similar problem, because they couldn't find a person who had expertise in the mobile, how to build the entire pipeline, not just the automation in terms of tests, also the entire release process. And that's how I end up at the Tinder. So this is like pretty much a 5-minute story of my journey.
So basically, you was invited to the Tinder, but not, but it wasn't your actually. Uh, you never sent resume to Tinder,
No.
passed interview. So
No, actually, it
without
was interesting. They literally convinced me, because my family and my mom and my all like brothers, cousins, everybody lives in Silicon Valley, and my wife at the time was pregnant, and nobody wants to move. So they said, "Listen, we're not going to put a pressure on you. Why don't you just come as a casual guest without any interview, just to see how we're doing at the Tinder?" And the funny thing, because I was married at that time, I never used Tinder. And the funny thing, my mom actually used Tinder. I was calling my mom, I was like, "Mom, what's your experience in Tinder?" I downloaded the app, obviously. I prepared for an interview. I even actually hacked. I hacked the app for the Android, and I even used the Appium back in the day to automate. So when I came to to see them, I had some kind of surprise. I surprised them. I visited the office, and I was very pleased to see how the Tinder operated in terms of the culture, because Silicon Valley culture is just heads down, really boring environment. Although you see a lot of videos about like how the Google has a fun office, Facebook, but in reality, it's not that fun. People just work, right? But when I came to LA, and it was right on West Hollywood, it's pretty much like a party bus. And I moved to the office, and it was wow. Like, I was pleasantly surprised by the culture and how the people work environment, work-life balance. And then they invited me for the interview. And after the interview, they made me a lucrative offer that I couldn't, refuse. They gave me good stock options, and I convinced my wife to move and try out for 6 months and see how the LA gonna work. And in a year, we even bought a house and end up in Los Angeles.
you just said that Google and Facebook aren't party bus, and actually people are bored, and it's not something that we can see on the YouTube videos where fun people doing fun stuff, a lot of interesting things like that. Could you explain the difference between the picture we could see on YouTube and the real working environment in Facebook and Google? Just a simple example.
You guys have to understand that the Google and Facebook are large companies, right? And they have more than one office, and we're talking about thousands of employees, right? So for instance, the Google office in New York is very different from the Google office in Seattle, and is very different from the Google office in Mountain View. So what I try to say that even across the offices across the United States, I've never been in a Google office in Europe or in the Ukraine, but I'm sure there's probably offices. They have offices all over the world. However, the offices that I visited, like in San Francisco and in Silicon Valley, I mean, if you walk to the office, they obviously offer you a free meal. They're going to show you, they have recreational areas for the beach volleyball, they have like ping pong games. But if you walk around, it still looks very like, people just sitting around and working quietly. And there's no excitement. I think the whole Silicon Valley idea is that it looks very tentative for the people who just starting in that industry, somebody who just graduated the college in their early 20s, excited to work for the big company for the resume. And that's what they actually meant to be for. These big companies like Google or Facebook is mostly for the youngsters. If you look at the majority of the employees of these companies, it's people like in their early 20s. People who are obviously, more family oriented in their late 30s, they not choose to work for the large companies such as, Amazon or Facebook or Google because of, it's very, I would say, subjective culture. It's not what you see, like I said, on YouTube, and it's not for everyone. And in terms of work-life balance, it also varies from team to team. So you can work at Google in super cool team and be excited and have an amazing learning opportunity. And at the same time, you work in the same company. It's super stressful environment, and your life is miserable. So, there's no like silver bullet that one size fits all. It doesn't mean you're going to work at the Google or Facebook and be happy.
Okay. Thank you for the honest answer, Misha.
Igor, what we also learned from your let it be LinkedIn profile, that you have quite a big experience as a trainer, and it would be curious to hear what kind of let's say speech do you usually have in front of your students when you are describing them their bright perspectives after they will finish your mobile automation course, I guess. Are you also describing them work in Google in the same way you describe it to us just now?
Absolutely. I'm a very transparent person. I never try to, set, that bright future in front of them. I'm very honest, and like I said, I try to make sure that I set the right expectation. So as the coach, right, and a mentor for these people, when I founded the company, besides my professional career, like you said, I'm teaching, right? When I founded the first company, BakeU in 2013, with my partner Alex back in the day, it was like everything else. We did, it wasn't intentional. Honestly, I didn't want to teach. Actually, I didn't know I can't teach. So what happened is, one of my friends just solicited me and said, Igor, we have few girls and guys who would like to learn about coding, and because automation all started 2012, 2013 in mobile. Web was a little bit earlier, and they said we're gonna pay you some money, and we can sit in the library. And there's a small city in Silicon Valley called Redwood City. We actually booked for free, completely free. We didn't pay anything for the library common space, like a conference room, and that's where we did our first class for the 8 students. And everybody liked it a lot, and people were so thankful that literally in a week we got another batch of dozens of students. And then we start posting this online for these courses, and somehow Visa found us. Visa, the credit card company, and they asked us to come to their office and discuss what we can train their team on the similar topic. And again, back to your question, Michael, what we say in front of the students in the first class, I think that the most important thing as a coach, you want to set the right expectation. You don't want to basically tell them there's going to be easy road, it's going to be 1 to 3, you're not going to get the job. I think that idea was that whatever I learned before, right, and I learned it hard way. It wasn't easy for me because back in the day, if you remember, there was no Udemy or Coursera, any online resources. If you want to learn something, you have to actually dig through, online and try yourself. And the learning curve was very steep. For instance, back in the day, if you want to automate anything in the Selenium WebDriver, you could spend like just 3 months to set up the project because there was no information whatsoever. And even before Jenkins, it used to be called Hudson, if you remember. The first CI system back in 2009, 2010 wasn't easy to set up either. So like, for instance, my first project in automation, it took me 6 months to set up. And I said, why people are supposed to suffer like myself if I can teach this how to do it in 1 week? So I was saying that it's not going to be easy. You still have to learn practice. You still have to learn programming, right? Either it is Java or Ruby or Python, regardless. You have to have that foundation. You cannot build the Skype scraper without the foundation. But at the same time, I said, what I'm going to help you, I'm going to do the easier way to get it there faster, all right? And that's exactly what we did, and we did pretty successfully over the course of 7-8 years. We probably graduated more than, probably 500 students. But again, our classes were small and only for those folks who basically wanted to jump from manual testing into coding world.
Cool, thanks. That was fair. And if you don't mind, let's spend another few minutes talking about trainings and you as a trainer, because it's like really close to us, to me and Victor, because we are also practicing trainers. And yeah, it's fun to talk about trainers and about trainings. Most probably I'm pretty sure there is some thing which can be specified, like, when you are training somebody to something, you start to understand it better. So it's kind of trainer's insight, let's call it like this. So do you remember some trainer insight from your career which, let's say, helped you to understand some topic way more better than you understood it before? Do you remember something like that? It would be interesting to hear.
Absolutely. When you were asking this question, actually, it's like a flashback, right? And like, wow. I actually remember that. Like I said, it's been a long journey. I've been teaching right now for, I think, about 8 years now. And obviously, there were times when we had to teach something we didn't know. Yeah, literally. And because we were, like I said, we run our courses where we feel very comfortable, probably like you, just like you guys doing. So back in the day, 2014, 2015, our flagship course was Appium using the Cucumber, the BDD framework. I was the biggest evangelist from 2012 until 2015 for the Cucumber, and it was with the Ruby setup, and also in a conjunction with the Selenium WebDriver and Appium APIs. So that's because it was our full stack. So we built the several courses for folks who would like to focus on mobile, iOS and Android, since the Appium were able, at that time, Appium was probably the only thing that you could use, to be honest, back 2014, I would say 15-ish. Similarly, using this similar stack and kind of similar approach, we could help people to automate web. And that was our flagman. Everybody who signed up, I could close my eyes and teach you the whole course, because we did it probably more than a dozen of times. But, however, coming back to your question about like when we had to learn something we didn't know, one of the companies, you probably heard of it, it's called OneLogin. Have you heard about OneLogin, Uniform Login? They approached us and said, we want you to come to our office for 1 week, and we're going to pay you, and you're going to teach our employees on the API path. And like you guys, like you said, you looked at my LinkedIn, and my entire career was mobile and also web, but majority mobile. And API, I knew it. I mean, I had a background in computer science back in the day, and obviously I worked with the backend a little bit, not extensive. So I totally understand how the HTTP anatomy, how to make requests, but I never automated it in my life. But I said, can you also teach us how to use the same stack, but extend it further to automate the REST APIs? So me and my business partner, Alex, back in the day, we sit down and literally had only 1 week to prepare. So in 1 week, not only we prepared a new kind of extension of the course for the REST API, but we also taught it. So it was pretty successful, and that's where we actually learned more than we actually supposed to deliver to the students. So it was interesting experience.
Sounds amazing. Really cool experience. I personally love the teaching others exactly because of this feeling when you learn something new by yourself.
All
It
the
would
time,
be
all the
one more
time.
small question. Yeah, indeed. One more question about trainers and trainings. What would you, let's say, let's put it another way. Um, what from the teaching experience helped you a lot in your professional career? That would be your answer would be probably something like a motivator for those who are teaching others.
Not only that, I would agree with you. Obviously, motivating other people for success. To be honest, um, about 3 or 4 times I wanted to quit. I said that's enough, because think about this: you have family, you're married, right? You want to have your work-life balance. You have more personal time. You want to spend with your wife, and teaching takes a lot of time. I mean, you know better than anybody else. I think both Victor and you know that. And what actually kept me to do that for many years is that appreciation from the students, right? When they come to you and say, thank you for changing my life. Sometimes we even had a situation, people cried. They literally said, I'm a single mom, I have 2 kids, I don't have a husband to support me. And what it did for me, I got a well-paid job. Now I get paid like a lot of money working for a reputable company. And that's what kept me driving, to be honest. That was the biggest motivation when we're continuing doing what we're doing, because money-wise, teaching is not very rewarding, to be honest. Because I think that the philosophy, at least my philosophy about teaching, is that in this life, right, where most of us are consumers, we always do everything for ourselves. Yes, we're doing a great job, we're working for the companies, do something that probably some people use and maybe be happy. But at the end of the day, you just do it for money so you can spend it on the things like cars, houses, whatever, travel. But this is selfish a little bit. So philosophy of teaching, you have to give something back. Similar to people go to church, right? So this is my sanctuary. I think my classroom where I have a contribution to give something back to the people, and maybe, I hope, help them to be better in their life and be more happier and at least afford certain things they couldn't afford before.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Victor?
Let me provocate you a little bit and ask you some kind of philosophy question. You are talking that we need to work hard and um, do a lot of things, learn, and you will be successful. At the same time, when you are listening to your story, uh, I feel that you are lucky, that you like a very lucky guy. You are strongly supported by your destiny. Look, you started in Barnes and Noble. It's an interesting company. It's a known company. Later, you move it to the really big and really interesting company, Expedia. Then he was invited to Tinder and missed all the interviews. Uh, this uh, this month we had an interview with Oля Gavrish, program manager for Microsoft. If I'm not mistaken, she passed 6 interviews. You passed one, and you was invited to see, to have a look and things like that. Later you was invited to Visa, and later you was invited to one login. So I feel that you are just so demanded, and you are very and very, I would say, enforced by the leg.
Not true, actually. I did pass interviews, and I had formal interviews as well. So I share with you some secret, which I don't share with a lot of people, but I think a lot of audience will be smiling right now, going to say, wow, this is going to be a little bit unconventional, I would say. That's the right word for that. So while I was working all my career at doing the job at the big companies, like you said, Barnes & Noble, probably at Barnes & Noble, I just worked for Barnes & Noble. But when I worked for the Expedia, I got a little bit bored because I think I like learned to the point where I feel like, okay, what else? What else could I do? So what I started to do in parallel, I started doing consulting. So I had a very good mentor, a person who taught me a lot and I'm successful. Obviously, nothing comes for free. So I'm not going to say his name, but he helped me to excel in my career and my life pretty much. But what I've been doing behind the scene, I was doing consulting as side jobs. So at some point, by working at Expedia full time, I was also working at the same time, I'm not exaggerating now, on 4 other projects at 4 different startups as a consultant. So I helped them to build similar success I've done it in other companies. And what I learned that the best way, and that's what people are going to hear right now, going to like about this, the best way to come to the interview is not as an interviewee, as an interviewer. What I mean by this, when I come to the interview, I come prepared, bring demo. I spent maybe 5 days to educate about the company, see what their product. If they have website, I write the entire automation website. I find the bugs. If they have mobile app, you can automate the mobile web without source code by having their binary. You can extract binary. For Android, you can do that. You can actually decompile and get binary for, you get an APK to automate the Android app just from the App Store without having, source code to compile that. So even though you can automate using like frameworks like Appium if you want to. APIs, or sometimes they hacked and open. You can find this on the hacker's website. So imagine you come to the interview, and like I said, I conducted myself, thousands of interviews in my career, and people come and just waiting. Where's my question? And the waiting. I never waited. When I come to the interview, I take initiative and say, guys, let me show you something. I have a surprise for you. And when I start showing them, so, like one of those magicians, I have a magic in my right pocket, in my sleeve, all over the place. So I'm like, okay, let me show you something. And I start revealing their problems. What I did at Tinder when I actually visited them in LA, I showed the problem. I use actually the load tool on the API to show that the rate, request per second. I started actually pushing it further and show that they're actually failing. And they were like, they were not surprised. They knew about this, but what they were surprised that I actually spent time to build something like this. I wrote end-to-end test for Tinder, go through entire flow, swiping until you get match and write a message. And I did it in certain repetitive ways, pattern. So my point is, if you want to get a job, really want to get a job, just go to the interview. Come to the interview with some sort of demo and show that you spent your personal time to build it, to surprise them. And guess what? Even if you're not going to answer certain question, and even if you're not going to solve some algorithm, they're going to look at you like on top of the stack because you went above and beyond, spend your personal time to learn about company, the product, and come prepared. That there's no luck, no magic.
Actually, this is probably the best advice about how to pass an interview. I really appreciate, guys, for all who are listening to this interview. Guys, mention this as a best ever advice how to pass an interview. I will also try probably at some point in time. So Thank you very much. It's pretty interesting actually. I never heard such advice, such opinion, because in most cases people are not proactive. They, as you said, just
Reactive.
uh,
They're just reactive. They're waiting. Yeah.
yes. Okay, ask me a question and give me a chance to answer. Great, great. Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. A lot of people today talking about the manual testing. A lot of people saying that manual testing will live forever. Some people saying that manual testing is slowly dying, and there are a lot of other opinions. A lot of people say that big companies are not hiring manual testers anymore. Oleg Gavrish in our previous interview told us that Microsoft doesn't hire testers at all. They even don't have a position for a tester. And if I'm not mistaken, Mikhail could fix me. They even don't have a position of SDETS, software development engineer and test. What is the current state in Tinder? Is there any space for the manual testing?
Yeah, I mean, this is not provocative question by any mean. I think this is a great question, and a lot of people who's listening to us today, I'm gonna give a full answer. The good thing for, I think, in terms of my experience and my exposure, I'm a good friend with Jonathan Lips. Everybody knows Jonathan Lips is the person who stays behind the APOM. We work together on an educational project right now, actually. I also talk to a lot of people, not just engineering managers or directors or VPs of the companies. I actually continuously talk with people who are evangelists in the testing world, like Joe Colantonio, for instance, a famous one. And I tell everybody
Yes,
that,
yes,
guys, please, if you want to be great at your career as a QA in the quality field, right, you should know your gods, right? You should know people who's behind the entire industry. But like I said, so I feel lucky because over the course of the years, I met them all in person in the various conferences, and I still communicate with them. Some with some more closer. But go back to your question. It's a great question. So for the matter of fact, okay, I'm not going to talk about Microsoft. Microsoft is a different world, and I actually had dealt with Microsoft back in the. So Expedia used to be a project at Microsoft before they spun off. If you read the history about Expedia, it was a project Microsoft. Then they were spun off by a company called IDC, and then became a separate entity. But before it was Microsoft. So imagine majority of employees at Expedia were my former Microsoft employees. So even back in the day, Expedia officially said we don't have a tester, but it's all BS. In reality, they do. And we'll go back to this. But again, I'm not going to criticize Microsoft, what they do. Microsoft is Microsoft. But what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to tell you a real story about testing and why the manual testing is not going to die ever. Great example. At the Tinder right now, official books would not have a single manual tester. So if you're going to ask me directly, Igor, do you have manual testers at Tinder? I'm going to say no. We have only SDATs, and all senior level, by the way. And there's not that many of them. For the matter of fact, 2. We're just hiring the third one for the back end. That's it. But are you kidding me? Tinder is a huge app. It's probably, they have more than 500 employees. How are you surviving with 2.5 automation engineers? And the answer is, we are working with outsourced company. And behind the scene, we have 17 senior manual testers in Colombia, in the United States, and Belarus. And similarly, if you're going to ask the engineering manager at Facebook, do you guys have manual testers? They say, no, we don't have manual testers. 0. We have only the engineers. Similar to what the Microsoft probably told you. But my best friend who works at the Facebook, he runs more than 300 people in India who's doing manual testing job. But because they are vendors, they are not directly hired employees, right? Facebook considers they don't have a full-time employees as a tester. And this is true, they don't. They have a engineering manager responsible for the testing part of Facebook, and 300 people are just a vendor. So companies do that for the various reasons, and we're not going to discuss this. But the manual testing is so essential. And manual testing has changed drastically over the course of past 10 years, drastically. If back in the day manual tester, we actually talk about functional testing, it's not anymore. I think manual tester is a true engineer nowadays. Now let me explain to you quickly what the manual tester do at Tinder. So besides functional testing and testing not only during the regression cycle, but also during development cycle, we're talking about on pull request. Every time developer makes a PR and they are about to close PR and I'm going to say with user story bug fix, it goes to the QA. So QA can build the build out of the pull request and validate it before it's actually said done. So it's called testing during development cycle, or everybody calls shift left, right? And then they do the regression testing at the end. But that's not the only thing they do. It's just a small part of their job. They also test analytics using like tools like Fiddler or Charles. And we're not talking about backend analytics. We're talking about front-end analytics. So they intercept the events coming out of the device and validate that these events actually comply with the guidelines for the analytics. And Tinder has own analytics. We do not use Google Analytics. We use our own in-house analytics. That's the second thing they do. And for the matter of fact, right now, we are hiring people for outsourced company for accessibility testing. Because accessibility testing is actually a compliance on US legislature. It means that by US law, the companies within the United States boundaries have to comply for ability, for vision impaired people, for people with disabilities. And by end of the year, we have to pass AA compliance. If you heard about accessibility, AA compliance is not easy. It's more than 27 checks for people who are colorblind,
Yes.
and people who, it's insane.
Yes.
Automation can only do 40% maximum coverage for accessibility, only 40. A little bit more on web, but on mobile, I think even less than 40. Who's gonna do it? Manual testers. And accessibility testing is not easy because accessibility testing requires knowledge of the tools and understanding what you're looking for. So it's extra knowledge. That's another one. Manual testers work in conjunction with automation testers, like brothers and sisters together, on the things such as the visual testing using Apply tools. And Apply tools is a platform as a visual UI validation based on artificial intelligence. So think about this. Here's another thing they have to learn, and it's not very intuitive. Every project has a different setup because you have to educate Apply tools on what you have to validate and what you have to ignore on a regular basis. Internalization testing. Here's another big one, what we call localization testing. And I can go on and on and on things that the manual testers do nowadays. It's a lot. And without them, you won't be able to sustain the operation of the product. For the matter of fact, the Tinder, right now, yesterday I had a one-on-one meeting with the VP of a product at Tinder. And until the end of the year, the agenda was to focus on the quality, to work in conjunction with the user happiness team to bring the quality to the next level, because quality is directly related to the conversion, monetary conversion. Let me give you an example. Visual bug is kind of, it's like understandable, right? You find it, you see something not working functionally, you fix it. But analytics can do so much harm that people don't understand. Imagine that the sales team or the finance team think that the Tinder certain feature performing super well based on the numbers, but the numbers could be misleading because analytic fire event 2 or sometimes 3 times instead of single time. So they have completely wrong events, completely wrong metrics based on which they make financial decisions. So imagine that could huge harm for the company. And a lot of people don't even know how to test analytics. And manual testers can do that. And automation team can automate that. But first you have to do it manually anyway before you submit it as a backlog for automation. So the answer to the original question, and all the folks who are listening to us, I don't think manual testing is going to die anytime soon. This is the muscle that will still lift the projects for a long time. It's just as a manual tester, be more educated, you have to be more engineered, you have to, don't be afraid to learn new things. It's a different manual tester. And I wouldn't even call this manual tester anymore. It's actually engineering job. So requirements for manual tester nowadays is 10 times bigger than it used to be 10 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Quite interesting, very extended answer. But let's try then to draw the picture of the software development engineer in test.
Yep.
What's the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people actually, I recommend a lot of folks who in QA to read the book, How Google Tests Software. It's a little bit outdated, but I think they did a pretty good job. I think this is like a Bible for tester, because they have a very well defined the borderline between the tester, automation engineer, and SDET. Because people think that this is all the single role, right? But it's not. So let's go back to your original question about SDET, software developer engineering test, right? This is like, for some people, it's a mystery. I'll tell you this, if you think that you know how to write few tests in Selenium SDET, you are not. You're automation engineer. I think you're just tester. SDET is indeed an engineer. There's no distinguish between, let's say, iOS developer and iOS SDET. And for the matter of fact, you cannot be SDET on all the things. Just like there's only iOS engineer, and usually they have entire career just building iPhone apps or Mac OS X apps or any like Apple Watch app, right? They don't know about Android. Some of them know a little bit about backend because they learned in the college, but their career dedicated as the iOS developer. Similar Android devs. If you are a good Android developer, only think about Android. Maybe in past, if you are from different era, you probably work somewhere else, but for the past probably 5-6 years, you've been doing only Android development, and that's your specialty. It's exactly same picture for the SDETs. SDETs cannot be like, I've seen a lot of job requirements. Oh, we are looking for the automation or SDET, right? That will work on the web, backend, and mobile. Come on, it's impossible. Yeah, I think this is a myth that, it's impossible. How we hired SDETs at Tinder, right? Obviously, they're engineers. Engineers who want to work more on testing side, but they are not only doing testing. Let me give you an example what SDET could do. So SDET works together with engineering team, and they're part of engineering team because they work on the same repository. You cannot be an SDET and work on a separate repo, because nobody going to see what you're doing, nobody going to check your PRs. So SDET work with the same developers. They're writing tests in the same repository. They go through the same guidelines, linter, unit test, everything. Yes, they write functional test, just an addition, but they can also write unit tests if necessary. They can write any test. Although it's not a good idea to write unit tests because they haven't written the code, but they can if they want to, because they understand the code base, they have access to code base, and they live in the code base. So they have to follow the rules and guidelines of the same as the developer for that platform. That's rule number one. Number two, SDETs, besides testing, they also work on things such as CI. Great example, they work on, their job could be improve the CI speed by building the parallel solution, or using SaaS solution. And they're the ones who work, if it's Android, Gradle, they know Gradle in and out. I think that SDETs know Gradle better than developers, because developers don't care about Gradle much. If folks who never heard about Gradle, it's better version of Maven. So for the iOS, similar, there are a lot of tools around this, right? They work on Xcode build and script out how to improve it on a regular basis. So they are also work on things such as automated release train. They could build like some scripts around like how to create automation around the release management, when to cut a new branch for the release, when they have to trigger the different jobs. So they become more like a DevOps, but I would probably put them more in the bucket of build engineers in conjunction with the platform and tools of the platform they're using. So they know better than any developer on that platform what's going on in build, deploy jobs and testing world. So SDETs are kind of mixture of development and build engineer with emphasis on testing. And they are on top of hierarchy. This is the highest you can get as an engineer in the QA kind of world. But requirement, you have to know the platform that you're going to work with in and out, just like developer. That's why I recommend to focus on one platform, not two, not three, just on one.
Okay, thank you very much. Pretty clear.
Absolutely.
Mikhail?
Yeah, Igor, let's keep this topic. We are switching to a little bit more technical world, let's say. And what would be interesting to hear for our listeners, I believe, is how Tinder is running mobile tests. I mean, what do you guys use? Are you using your own, let's say, farm, or are you using some? Are you hiring? Are you renting some place on something on some platforms like Browser Stack or something similar? It would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, very good question. Back in the history, right, for those folks who never heard about Browser Stack or Sauce Labs, on all the SaaS solution, there's Headspin right now, there's Bitrise. I can go on and on because I tried all of them. Or AWS Device Farm or Firebase Farm, right? We can go on and on that list. And the funny thing, luckily, like because I did a lot of consulting and teaching, I tried literally all of them. So just to throw the wrench in the SaaS solutions, if you want to build a true continuous integration system where testing also run on a similar stack, what we call pre-merge stack of checks and block someone, meaning that you need the speed. So there is not a single SaaS solution, software as a service solution, such as Browser Stack, Sauce Lab, that can deliver this. Because of the network latency, they are at least going to be 3-4 times that any solution that you have to build internally within a company. So what I try to say that if you want to have an automated test, and let me give you an example where they could work very well. If you want to use services like Browser Stack or Sauce Labs, it's good to do post-merge. Let's say the PR been merged, build be triggered, and you can do some visual validation tests like Applet tools. Perfect. But if you want to run your test and actually punish the person who's been doing PR with some sort of defect, or at least bring their attention to the test, they have to run on the same checklist as the unit test and lint and other things, so they have to be fast. So speed is the biggest issue with all the SaaS solutions. Therefore, coming back to your question, what do we use at Tinder? Over the course of 5 years, we changed a lot of strategies. But we learned that the best way to do it in such a way, we have a number one, full control, and number two, scalability options. So luckily, and only recently, we were able to do this. And what we use, AWS. You'll be, hold on a second, AWS only for the backend and web. What is it with mobile? And you're right, it's very, very new thing. It took us some time to build the Kubernetes cluster for Android, because Android is very resourceful. If anybody runs Android, will see that their computer is going to die, right? They are very consuming. So therefore, it's very expensive. So the way, for the EC2 instances, we have to get on AWS, we pay a lot of money, but Tinder has a lot of money. So we run multiple containers using Docker and Kubernetes. So we containerize the entire Android solution. In terms of emulation, we use a Genymotion Docker. So Genymotion And people heard about Genymotion, and you can go to their website, Genymotion, and see they have a SaaS solution too for the emulation for the Android. But no, we use their Docker container, not their SaaS solution on AWS. And the way we do this, let's say person makes PR, it triggers dozens of containers, again, Kubernetes controller for scalability, and shard all the tests using our in-house updated fork solution across all these containers. And each container runs this multiple emulators using Genymotion. So our Android espresso test run very fast. The biggest issue is the build job, because build job, we use the enterprise cache for the Gradle to build it fast. It takes about on average 5 minutes. So build is actually the longest thing right now we have. Test, we can shard across whatever. So we have right now more than 400 espresso tests that can run simultaneously of dozens of different phones. I'm sorry, the Genymotion containers, and bring back aggregate the result. And because of the recent release of the Mac instances on AWS, which are very expensive, for the matter of fact, extremely expensive. It's just easier to buy Mac minis. But because of the scalability, we can build these instances based on templates. And we can run at the same time dozens of AWS Mac instances. And if we need to upgrade them, it's easier to do it than, imagine if you have a cluster of Mac minis, you have to puppetize them, use a Puppet, right? DevOps is very expensive. So on Amazon, it's much cheaper. So it's overhead cost for the renting these machines, but it's cheaper on DevOps per hour. So we were able to deliver the scalable solution. And as of today, we are using the AWS for everything, for mobile, backend, web, entire stack.
Cool, thanks. Very explanatory and very interesting. I'm pretty sure that our listeners will appreciate this answer. And going further, it would be interesting to hear, during your experience as a consultant, most probably you learned that there is a real need to explain the reasons behind some decisions or some tools selected for some processes to business who will pay for it, actually. And the same probably applicable for the selection of AWS farm you just described for Tinder. So the question here would be something like, have you calculated, I don't know, return of investment coefficient for that before buying all those expensive resources on AWS?
Absolutely. And here's always the question is the alternatives, right? What should I use instead of it, right? And how much is going to cost me to set up and run over the time? So prior to AWS, we used the in-house cluster. So we had the racks of Mac minis at the Tinder office in Los Angeles, right? We're talking about real racks with a physical Mac minis, but most powerful ones, which cost about $3,000 each. We're talking about 12 of them, right? And then every year, we have to upgrade them. We have to buy physical machines. Plus, if there's something with them, something wrong with them, and they're offline, you have to go physically in the office and fix them. And how much the developers or DevOps make in the United States, you have to take into consideration because they spend time, their salaries go towards that. So maintenance cost is actually very high for this. The initial cost is very cheap. On the Android side, it was even worse. On Android, we built a cluster of small Linux machines that had each of them 5 Android phones connected. I even have a picture somewhere. Maybe I can share with you later. So it looks very interesting. It's like, think about like large boxes, and each of them has a slots for the phones and small Linux boxes. So the problem was that the phones have the tendency to overheat and the batteries get inflated. It's very dangerous, right? You can actually fire. And we've heard about stories about Samsung phones that actually explodes. So we've been almost there. Not a single phone exploded, but we're about to explode. So what happens is, over the course of a year, we notice that we have to buy dozens of new phones just to support this operation. Plus, phones go offline. And the smart charger / hub costs more than $1,000 each. because if we overcharge it all the time, they're going to explode faster. So again, operational cost of running in-house farms are very expensive. The problem with even go backward before that, we tried to use SaaS solution like Firebase Farm, and we tried to use AWS Device Farm. Here's the problem, what we encountered with them. For instance, on AWS Device Farm, we rented 10 devices. Not cheap at all. They're super expensive if you ever try to use AWS Device Farm. They don't care about those devices. Even they had dedicated, we actually asked them to have a dedicated, isolated farm just for Tinder. And they did it. But guess what happened? They forget update Google services. And then test not running. The device goes offline for some reason. You have to write a message, tech support, wait 24 hours. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare to manage because they don't care about these devices. And like I said earlier, extremely slow. So what we calculated over the time, that the biggest problem is the maintenance. And then what we also find out that if we let the DevOps team at Tinder, who are living in that AWS environment all the time, their nature, right? They know how to maintain this, they know how to automate this, they know how to make this scalable. The initial cost looks very high, but over the long run, it becomes cheaper because the maintenance cost is pretty much close to zero, because we don't even touch it. So that's the answer to the question. Enough. So it's not, there's no silver bullet. You have to understand that. In terms of consulting, it's really hard to explain because sometimes people say I have a budget, right? It becomes like, this is it, we cannot do anything. Then we have to become creative. And the way you do this by educating them. So you basically give them a very small solution that is not scalable yet, but they solve the problem immediately. But we show them that it actually works. And then as the time progresses, you're slowly moving towards the scalable solution. And that's the beauty about consulting. Consulting is not that you just have to bring all the cards on the table right now. You just basically solve immediate problem, what we call low-hanging fruit, right, in the United States. And then you start like slowly feeding them, okay, let me show you some other things that could improve you.
Okay, cool. So we're now pretty sure that you had a lot of experience with calculating ROI. Okay. Yep. Yeah, if you don't mind, let's switch a little bit direction of our discussion. We have, let's say, a lot of small fun to add to our questions, if you don't mind. So a question would be the following. All of us, while working pretty long, let's say, in the same direction, usually bring some habits from the professional experience to the real life, which is not related to profession. And it may be like very different things for different people. It would be interesting to hear from you whether you have what are you swiping right at home? That's the
question. So first of all, I don't swipe right. I'm for the past probably few years, I'm not heavily using the Tinder. Although I look at the different products, I've seen it on product meetings, but I don't use it personally on day-to-day basis. Although a lot of people would anticipate, like, yeah, you work for Tinder, you're probably using it a lot just to understand what you're testing, what you're delivering. I'm not doing that actually. I focused on, because like I said, I'm more in upper management. I focus more on larger initiatives, on different, I would say higher tasks. So I don't bring swipe right. But in terms of habits, right, I try to, my advice to all the professional people, don't try to bring your work at your life. And this is the biggest thing I learned over the course of my life. If you want to sustain your natural life, try to have different habits besides your work, because work as your habit, it has a very negative effect on you. I think that every person is unique. Everybody has different talents, and I notice a lot of people who in high tech has a lot of talents. We have a lot of musicians actually that I encounter in the high tech. Artists, people have sports, and I think I personally don't try to bring my work into my life and try to stay on the, when I close my computer, I close my computer. I try to spend time with my kid. I try to be a nice family guy, and family man, spend time with the family in terms of, I try to do everything else, but not to think about the work. So I don't try to bring professional habits in my life.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Thanks for answering. And there
Absolutely.
is still one more question related to swipes. We've Googled a little bit before this interview together with Victor and found quite a few videos on YouTube where people educating other people how to automate swipes in Tinder. Either programmatically via Chrome driver in the web interface, for example, or even mechanically. I saw a few videos how it is done mechanically. So it would be interesting to hear what are you guys using. Did you watch those videos in Tinder?
Yes,
And
yes,
are you
yes.
using the same approach?
So that's when I joined. That's the good. Yeah, very good question. Thank you. I like some humor too. So back in 2016, when I joined Tinder, my first initiative was to automate swipes. Literally, I'm not joking. And we did it. We because there was about 100 swipes for the free accounts, and then you get banned for the day. Say, okay, you have to come back in 24 hours to keep swiping, or you have to upgrade to the Tinder Gold. Now we have more than Tinder Gold. We have Tinder Platinum and different tiers of accounts. But that was my first thing that we try to automate as the swipes. It's very natural. So a lot of people do that. So I call it fishing with dynamite, right? So basically, you don't want to sit. You want to get all the fish and just all the matches and only start chatting. I think the best way to do this APIs, to be honest. But back in the day, it was possible. Now I think I might be wrong. I think it's not that easy. But back in the day, you could actually use the Tinder APIs. There was a website, a hacker's website. You can get all the endpoints, including recommendations. So swipes called recommendation recs. And you can actually write your automated task to do the recs in APIs because it's faster, right? Rather than do it mechanically on the screen. So that's the most efficient way to fishing with dynamite.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for answering.
Absolutely,
Victor?
absolutely.
Misha, do you have any more questions, or we could move to the questions from the Slido?
Yeah, let's move. Sure.
Okay, let's try. We have several questions in Slido to Igor, and let's try to dedicate up to 3 minutes for, probably 5 minutes for each question.
Let's do it.
We have two questions from Roman. The first question: I have been working in AQA field for last 4 years, but have no experience in mobile automation. Does it work to start with the XC test or just start with Appium?
Very easy answer. Depends what product you're going to work on, or you're planning to work on, or you are working on right now. It's very easy. If you work in a company or planning to work in a company that have what we call a hybrid app, like use React Native, so basically a cross-compiled. So you build one code base and you can cross-compile for Android and iOS. So React Native is perfect solution. There's nothing wrong with this. There are banks that doesn't require very lucrative and hot UI. All they need just to show numbers like banking. And for that reason, they have apps that look exactly identical on iOS and Android, like literally identical, because it's just a web view, right? The wrapper, kind of. In that way, Appium is probably the best shot. And I would personally use Appium in that case. And when I spoke with Jonathan Lips about months ago about this, because he just released a new course in Headspeed University. I think amazing course on Appium. He spent like 6 months to build it. We talk about is this is the most efficient way. However, if you work on an application like a Tinder that is extremely native, means that it has all the super gestures, a lot of things under the hood that very different from platform to platform. So if you're gonna download the Tinder on Android and iOS, it's two different apps, very different. So Appium wouldn't work, and you won't be able to achieve the same success moving on forward. Maybe for a little bit, up to maybe 50 test cases. When you go beyond 400, 500 functional tests, you will fail big time. So then you have to go native like XUI test. So it's based on the nature of application. If it's very native, very UI-driven app, then native solution like Espresso or XUI test. If it is cross-platform, then Appium. I hopefully answered the question.
Okay. The next question, the second question from Roman. What is the most challenging in mobile testing comparing to the web UI API testing?
Okay, if we talk about manual testing, the most challenging is Android. The number of devices, right? Look at the Android. Android platform is open, right? Means there are so many variations of different vendors who build the Android phones, and you have to be smart about this. So you're probably going to use the Google Console for understanding what is the most used devices for your application, and probably select the top 10 and just stay there. So that's the challenging part. On iOS, there are more than, it used to be like 1 or 2 iOS devices, now it's more. So similar idea. I think the challenging that you have to test different screens and different versions, right? You have to go back because usually they support at least 3 versions of the APIs. So you think about iOS 14, 13, 12, right? You have to support 3. So that's the challenging part, because what it might be like the developers use a lot of libraries, right? When they write code natively behind the scene for the networking requests, they could use a library that works very well on the latest version of iOS, but could completely fail on the older version. And that's very challenging for the mobile testing, I think.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Anastasia. Can you recommend a modern book on mobile testing?
The books usually get outdated because it takes about a year to publish them, so I wouldn't recommend books at all, because if you buy the book, they're already outdated. Yeah, Victor is smiling. I can recommend you a course. There are a lot of good courses on mobile testing, but most importantly, what I recommend is to subscribe to some sort of podcast, like Joe Colantonia. He has Test Automation Guild, or I forgot the name of this podcast. Every week he has a guest that talks about this. He has like more than hundreds of different podcasts recorded and saved. I would also recommend to continue monitoring like what's in the trends. And in terms of education, there are courses like on Udemy. You can buy it for $10. Even for Ukraine, $10 is not like great. I mean, there's not like a lot of money. For 10, $15, you can buy a Udemy course and educate yourself on the mobile testing. However, I will warn you right away, if you want to get something extended, like let me give you an example of what extensive course means, or call it advanced course. For instance, any course on, let's say, XUA test, for instance, right, can get you to a certain level. They will teach you how to write simple tests and maybe even version of page object model, kind of, for scalability on iOS, but that's about it. But topics like network mocking, without which you won't be able to sustain your app, for the stability, or teach you about some advanced topics called like how to build a test for the speed and this various tricks on stability. Nobody teach that. You won't find a course on this. We actually trying right now to release our course on this on the Headspin platform. We're in beta right now. Hopefully next month we're going to release it. It's going to cost about $200 to $300, but we don't have it yet. I was myself, for my former students, were searching for a comprehensive course. I found one for Android. And later I'm going to share the resources with Victor, and Victor probably can share it, right, with the folks.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, perfect. So yes, I will share the great resources on mobile testing and automation that I think are top of mind, because that's what I used to search for my students, because I'm a big fan of alternative resources. I'm not the one who will say, oh, only use my course, don't buy anything else. No, I think you should use 2, 3, 4 resources, and I'm going to be more than happy to share after this interview.
Okay, so just send me the list and we will distribution tomorrow and share all info you would like to share with our
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For the Android,
yes.
definitely, I have a few good like advanced courses on automation. Yeah, they're not easy,
Okay,
and I recommend that the best prerequisite for this course is just to learn basic Android, fundamentals, because the instructor assumes that you've been at least built like a weather app or something in Android. Otherwise, it's gonna be super hard to watch.
okay. Next question is how do you work with the stakeholders, particularly customers? It's probably a
So
very wide question.
yeah, it's stakeholders is a very vague term. I mean, internal stakeholders I work all the time. Product, right? Product managers, my stakeholders at the moment at Tinder. How do I work with them? I think it's always push and pull. Don't forget, I'm the release manager, right? I'm the gatekeeper. I'm standing at the gate and I'm supposed to say no. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this. For instance, every 2 weeks we cut release branch. And after we cut release branch, we're not allow anybody to submit any pull request into that release branch. It's gated. So we go to bake mode, we run regression in 24 hours, all manual regression 24 hours. And right after that, we start rolling out gradually. 1% on Friday. And then on Monday, when we get analytics on the crash report, if the crash report was good, we go 5. And then right to the 100. So we're accelerating this. So what I try to say that stakeholders are usually pushing for things like, hey, Igor, we forgot. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So important. We forgot to push this feature. Can you do me a favor? Can you push it to the last minute of the release branch? And I say, no, you can't. You have to wait for another 2 weeks. So it's impossible. We spend millions of dollars on marketing. Please, I beg you. So what we're doing, how I manage this, I spoke with the CTO, Tom at Tinder, and Chichu is the vice president, and we created a committee where the people, if they want to release something, they have to submit it 2 weeks in advance, so we are anticipating this. And if there's emergency, there's approval committee, including the CTO and VP, and the VP of product, that have to say, yes, we approve this, and the person to explain why they are late, why they couldn't commit on time before we got this branch. So that's why I said it's push and pull, and there's a lot of politics involved into this, and that's how I deal with internal stakeholders. Internal.
Okay, and next question from Shiva. Igor, as you mentioned it would be advisable to focus on one area, either web or mobile or web services. If you want to focus on mobile, where should I start from?
My answer is very simple. What do you do on a daily basis? What do you like the most? Some people, big fans of Android devices like Samsung, for instance, right? And they use it on day-to-day basis. They know everything in and out. So Android. If a person will use iPhone on daily, usage, and you like how the Apple is actually building their products, then stick to this. So it's a preference. But I still recommend to focus on one mobile platform because it's going to take a long time. Based on my experience in teaching, it takes about 3 to 6 months to learn the fundamentals, and then another 6 months at the real job to get to some level of confidence. So total sum up to about a year before you feel confident to do it professionally. And you have to stick for at least 2 years at that platform until you're gonna probably recognize yourself as a professional.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all
That's
questions
awesome.
from the chat. Igor, I appreciate your time. I would say I'm really impressed by your expertise. It's pretty interesting, pretty in depth. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I will also appreciate if you will send me the full list of the resources you would like to share with our community members. And as I said, tomorrow we will do a distribution. Also, please don't forget to mention your course, your resources. We will be happy to invite people to join your course so they will be able to speak to you, to grab some secrets, including some secrets on how to pass an interview. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much, guys, for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Hopefully, it's going to help some folks in their, career, and I'll be more than happy to share resources. Once the course is going to be officially released, I'll be sharing that probably within the next month or so. Absolutely. We spent probably close to 9 months to build it, and it's we put everything we learned with my business partner
Like amazing.
Boris. Yeah. So. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Till the
Thank you, Igor.
forget to mention till the workshop, not till next time soon. Igor on Committed will run a workshop, and don't forget to join.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun session. You're gonna like it. It's
Yes,
great for the beginners.
yes,
Yeah, dive into the iOS
yes,
mobile native testing. Yeah.
yes. See you. Bye.
Yeah. Take care. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.